Thank you very much. I'm already excited to see that. That's going to be really good, and we'll make sure that I take my 10-year-old son to go and see it with me. And thank you very much. I have the distinct pleasure of introducing the second part of the program today. Dr. Bolden, good to see you.
Always good.
It's the second panel is entitled "Hidden Figures in STEM," and our esteemed panelists will discuss the role of that black scientists played during the nation's first during the race to put the man on the moon. In addition, you are all in as for a treat. As you saw, they're going to talk a little bit more about that. But I just really want to thank 21st Century Fox for letting us see a clip of the movie. And again, just want to thank the panel for, thank you. And again, thank the panelists for the second part of this program. Very excited to learn more about what you're doing and about STEM and how we're going to continue to grow in this area. Thank you. Dr. Ford.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. So yeah, it's super awesome and excited about this panel. And it's also great because we talked so much in the first panel about image and representation. So it's a great segue for this next discussion. So I want to actually start by asking, how many of you know who Katherine Johnson is? See, all of our panelists know, of course. But I love beginning. How many of you had seen the trailer for Hidden Figures already? So this is amazing, right? So what's amazing right now, people, we haven't seen the film yet. You ask a room, who knows who Katherine Johnson is? Most people don't know the name still, but they have at least seen the trailer. My hope is, beyond, once this film is out, we can ask a room like this who she is, and everyone will raise their hand. So I'm gonna tell you who she is really quickly. So Katherine Johnson is still alive. She's 98 years old. NASA mathematician, black woman, okay, calculated the trajectories that got us to space and to the moon. She was a critical part of this story, but most people didn't know about her until very recently. Actually, she was awarded the Medal of Freedom by the president last year. At the ripe age of 97, she was able to get this award from the president. And so it's an exciting time, but it's also very apparent that there are women, especially women of color, who have been innovators and who have been a part of these fields, but their stories are just not known. And so that's what this panel is ultimately about, is about how do we elevate the image when it doesn't even just have to be fictional. This is based on a woman, a real life woman who's still with us today. And also, and this is actually what the work that I'm currently doing at the White House, what's the role of media in that? What's the role that entertainment media, and what can it play in helping us change the view that the public broadly has about who is a STEM professional and who works in these areas? And so with that, I'm going to introduce our amazing panel that we have with us today. So joining us, and actually my piece of paper is a little bit out of order. So right next to me, Elizabeth Gabler from Fox 2000. We also have Mimi Valdez, who was an executive producer for the Hidden Figures film. We also have, I'm looking at the order. Lisa Galopter. Yeah, I was like, Lisa, how do you pronounce her last name? I've been knowing her for I don't know how long, and I never can pronounce her last name. So she's at the U.S. Department of Education. We also have Dr. Rudy Horn, who is a professor at Morehouse College. Joining us as well is Dr. Allison Scott from the Level the Playing Field Institute. And last, but certainly not least, is Major General Charles Bolden, who is the administrator of NASA and an astronaut. So similar to what we did for the previous panel, I'm just going to go through and ask each of our panelists a few questions. And then hopefully, if time permits, we'll have a chance to take a question or two from the audience. So as you're listening, keep in mind that you might have a chance to ask a question of our esteemed panel. So Elizabeth, I want to start with you actually. So you have played such an amazing role in a few other awesome and very impactful films, Life of Pi, The Fault in Our Stars. Can you tell us what caught your attention when you heard about this Hidden Figures project, and what ultimately made the decision? What was your decision making that ultimately led you to just take this on, and now we have this amazing thing we're all highly anticipating?
Thank you. One of the most powerful things that we can do in the entertainment industry is provide our audiences around the world with material that inspires them and that creates an intense emotion in them, whether that be humor, or romanticism or adventure or just the compassion for other human beings. And when I read the script of Hidden Figures, it did all those things for me. And I was so moved, I cried at the end of it, and I said I have to be part of making this movie. I felt that it was a story of three women, particularly three women, but also others, who refused to let the forces that were saying no to them stop them from following their dreams. And as the mother of a 14-year-old girl, I always want my child and all the children that I know to know that they can achieve their dream if they just keep fighting. And I felt this was one way for us in the entertainment industry to put a positive message of hope into the world that needs it so badly.
Yes, fantastic. And actually, I want to do a quick follow-up, similarly since we're talking about Hidden Figures, and I want to also ask Mimi a question as well. So you are an executive producer for this project, but you've had an amazing career as well in terms of being in music, philanthropy, journalism, etc. So can you talk about your inspiration? What inspired you to get involved with this project?
Well, as soon as I heard it, I had a meeting with Donna Gelati, who found this book and got this script made and brought it to Elizabeth. And I had a meeting with her about another project. And as soon as she started describing it to me, as Pharrell's producing partner, I was like, wait a minute, this story is amazing and we will do anything to be a part of the project. And I think, Pharrell and I just started getting into movies. This is actually our second movie. Our first movie was Dope. But what we want to do, and Pharrell's always been really good about his own celebrity and how he uses it, is to bring attention to projects like this. Our goal with our content is always to, obviously to entertain, but we want to inspire and educate. And throughout his whole music career, he's always tried to put focus on trying to make education cool. His first band, NERD, he purposely chose that name because he wanted to make being a nerd cool. This was just an extension of that. I mean, Katherine Johnson, her story is so amazing, and if we could do anything to bring this amazing woman's story to life, we just wanted to be a part of it.
Awesome, wonderful. And so still, since we're going to keep this Hidden Figures theme, I want to keep in this spirit. So Administrator Bolden, can you talk a bit about, so NASA was obviously very deeply engaged in the production of this film. We also know of another film like The Martian. That NASA's been involved in. Can you talk about that process and just the role that NASA has played in working with Hollywood to tell these stories?
Yeah, we feel that Hollywood, social media are critical partners for us. We would not be where we are today were it not for those two. I've got Bert sitting down here who's my specialist. He is actually the guy that, we have one person who interfaces with entities in Hollywood that want to get something from NASA. We communicate with millions more people today than we did 5 years ago because we have entered the world of social media. When we have an event, we have a NASA social. It doesn't make any difference whether it's a launch or something else where we invite people from around the world. They apply and we bring them in and let them get briefed on what the mission is going to be. And it is, when I talk to them, I tell them I don't want them to try to tell a technical story. I want them to tell people how they feel, because we're in a people business. People think about machines all the time, but we're really people. And if I can get them to communicate how they felt when they had a NASA experience, then I think we're going to win people.
Great. So NASA feels that this is a benefit for you all as well.
It is a necessity. Let me put it that way. It's like math and science.
Yes.
It is an app. I'm a big arts person. In fact, my deputy is David Newman, and when we talk about STEM, the two of us talk about STEAMed, because we say, science, technology, engineering, arts, math, science, and design. You don't want a funky looking spacesuit when we go to Mars. So,
Well, thank you so much. So, Dr. Horn, Rudy, so if I understand, you were a consultant for, this is amazing.
Yeah.
We have all these people who are connected to this project in different capacities. So can you talk about your experience doing that, but also you are a mathematician, a professor, and talk about you as an African-American man, mathematician, like what led you to want to become a professor and a mathematician?
Okay, everybody can hear me. I'm originally from Chicago, and I was, until my junior year of high school, honestly, I wanted to be a lawyer. But then my junior year, I took a physics class, and I really loved physics. And then the next year, I took calculus, and I loved that even more. So I decided to major in engineering physics. So I went to the University of Oklahoma. One of our other panelists was Boomer Sooner. So I went there for engineering physics, but I realized I didn't like engineering so much, but I ended up double majoring in physics and math. And after that, then I went to graduate school at the University of Colorado at Boulder, and I got my PhD in applied math. My role in the movie Hidden Figures was I was the math consultant. So the math that Taraji's writing on the board, the little girl's writing on the board, that's me. So you can blame me. So right or wrong, I'll be the person who gets the heat for that, and that's okay. If the movie inspires young women, young men for that matter, or anyone to just pursue math, pursue the story of Katherine Johnson, because I had never heard of it, and when I was approached to do this, thanks to a guy named Wynn Thomas, who was the production designer for this movie, I told him with a straight face, like many other people, I was like, I've never heard of Katherine Johnson, and I have a PhD in applied math. And so, but as I learned about her story, and I at first was hesitant about doing this because I actually said, well, maybe you really want an engineer to work with you, but the director and the production people made it clear they wanted a mathematician to work with them, and so I ended up taking the job, and it was a great experience. I learned a lot about her. I was able to work with the actors and actresses. I had never done anything like this before. I am very much an academic, so yeah. But it was a great experience.
Great, thank you so much for that. So this project, we hope, will help inspire countless young women, especially women of color, to see themselves as being capable and more than competent in math or other STEM fields. So I want to shift a little bit and talk about research and evidence-based and like what we know works in terms of helping to promote or foster inclusion. So Dr. Scott Allison, I want to ask you, can you talk a little bit about the work that you're doing and particularly what the research tells us that we need to do to help address this persistent issue of getting young girls and children of color into the STEM fields?
Absolutely. So my background is in research, so I'm going to come at this from a slightly different angle. So I want to talk a little bit about what happens if we don't tell this story, what happens if we don't have this movie. So a couple statistics, we heard some from the earlier panel. 450 black women nationwide took the APCS exam in 2015. 450 nationwide. So why is that? Let's start to deconstruct the reason behind those numbers. One is access. So we know that underrepresented students of color and low-income students just don't have access to computer science courses. Based on the panel that was just up here, we know that computing and computational thinking crosses every field. So that's a critical element. The second element that I want to touch on and that research really speaks to is the psychological barriers. So what happens when you are a member of a group underrepresented in any domain, in any field? What are the messages that you're constantly receiving, and how does that affect your decision making? So without seeing individuals like Katherine Johnson, without having those role models, how do black women perceive of the opportunities that they have in specific fields? And that's a really important feature. One more point that I'll make is that it's not just black women. There's also the impact that it has on society at large. To not hear those stories, again, it perpetrates the stereotypes that we're trying to deconstruct about who can be successful in STEM fields, who can be successful mathematicians, computer scientists, et cetera. So that's a little bit about the research background, and I can say a little bit more.
Well, also, what's a gap? So in terms of like, this is what we know, and what don't we know, or what should we invest more resources in understanding from a research perspective?
So I think we actually know a lot. I I want to call out Barbara from the last panel who talked about literally just for making an investment on behalf of Intel in Oakland Unified, was able to see a 400% increase in the number of students taking courses. So we know that providing access will increase the number of students that end up entering into those fields. I think what we need to do a little bit more research on and understand, and something that I'd be really interested in, is understanding what the impact is of either social media campaigns. I don't know how many of you are familiar with the I am an engineer hashtag that happened about a year ago. The same thing with Hidden Figures. When Hidden Figures comes out, like, what is the impact that has just kind of in popular culture, society, for Black women, but also more broadly?
Great, thank you. So Lisa, I want to shift to you. So you are at the Department of Education, and also I know you're with USDS, United States Digital Service. Can you talk about what's the role of the federal government in this space, and what's the balance between working with the private sector and this sort of public-private interface? And can you just speak to what's currently happening? What are the focus areas that are really helping to emphasize this importance of diversity in the STEM fields?
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, I think it's, I want to echo a little bit of what Allison talked about, which is, you talked about Black folks taking the AP Computer Science class. I will say this, so I was actually one of them, not last year, a little bit earlier than that. But as a Black woman with a degree in computer science, I know it is hard, few and far between. Talk about role models, none have existed. When I graduated from college, I would have been the 9th Black woman in 25 years to actually graduate with a degree in computer science, and the numbers have in fact gone down since then. So it is really, really sad. And she talked about AP computer science being offered, but I actually want to give you a couple other statistics. So I work both at the U.S. Department of Education as well as technologist with the U.S. Digital Service in the White House. But there's things like, so there's APCS, but only 1/3 of public high schools serving predominantly African Americans offer calculus, and only about 40% offer physics. So it's not just computer science, it's not just like, oh, this crazy newfangled science-y thing. It is things that are basic core things. And just, in fact, in 9 states, no African Americans took the AP Computer Science class. That includes Mississippi, which has the most African Americans in this country. So those are the kinds of things that the government is actually trying to address, whether it is through encouraging and developing STEM programs, either at HBCUs, who are doing a tremendous job graduating the most folks of color in computer science programs.
And just a chime, a little bit about Morehouse. They just recently were awarded from the Mathematical Association for producing the most African American math students as well, who go on to graduate school.
Yeah. So there are a number. So there are a number of programs that the Department of Education is putting into place in terms of trying to support schools, communities, and organizations that are trying to make change. That includes both in-school programs, we've heard some things about, and then also out-of-school programs, informal learning, because as everybody has talked about, this is the opportunity that will exist for us in terms of growing our economy, growing our African American community's opportunity to have economic growth, and affect, in fact, what the future of the country looks like.
Great. So I want to shift gears a little bit and give a few of our panelists a chance to tell you a little bit more about their pathways, because I think they have some really cool things that they've done that we would be remiss if we didn't give them a chance to share. So Lisa, since you were just speaking, I'll put you back on the spot again. So you have had an interesting career as a Black woman with a degree in computer science, and you were critical to the launch of Hulu. I know you also worked for BET. So can you talk a little bit about that, your experience with working with these platforms as a technologist and as an African American woman, or just your journey to do that?
Yeah, no, I'd love to do that. So this is one of the things that I talk about quite frequently, which is people talk about computer science. It's like it's this thing you have to go to a dark corner and write programs in. And I will say, and I'm kind of here to try to shatter that myth as best that I can. I'm going to go back a little bit further, which is I was a software engineer on a project called Shockwave, which, depending on your age, you may have heard of. There's not a lot of nodding. I don't appreciate any of you. So Shockwave brought animation to the web. Before Shockwave, the web did not move. It was static text. Oh, it was ubiquitous. You didn't know what it was called. All of you have it on your computers today. Not on your phones, though. We'll leave that aside. So as an engineer, I worked on that, and I've worked at the intersection of media and technology for almost 30 years now. And it's been a really, really interesting journey. So I started as a software engineer at a software company, writing code in a darkened, they unscrew the light bulbs. That's true, but actually as kind of my career progressed, and as the technology progressed, and as the media changed, it actually comes full circle, so that I can do things like help launch Hulu, run BET Digital, and try to make influence about how people consume media. And so as we start to think about, the hidden figures in media, it is the other people on the previous panel talked about, like, it's about following your passion. And today I would say that computer science is not something that sits off in a corner. It's like water. It's like learning to read. Like, people don't say, well, I don't need to learn to read because I'm not going to be a novelist. That is where we are today. Computer science is in every single thing we do, whether it's sports, fashion, finance, it's media especially. And so I just think that that's a really critical thing to drive home.
Great, thank you. So I want to also shift and ask Administrator Bolden if he would talk. So how many of you know an astronaut, like personally, if you've ever met one or been in the room with one? Really? Okay. No, I guess people hang. There are a lot of astronauts that have a lot of friends here. So, Administrator, can you tell us about, first of all, you were, if I'm reading correctly, 4 missions over 14 years. So I want to know, what was it like in space, just from your perspective, but also can you tell us about your journey to becoming an astronaut and then administrator of NASA?
My journey was very unlikely. I grew up in Columbia, South Carolina, in the segregated South. And my mom and dad were teachers, and they always told me and my brother we could do anything we wanted to do. They just beat that into us. However, I learned that it is critically important for someone to reinforce that, because as I grew up, the only thing I wanted to do was go to the Naval Academy. I applied. I had to go to the President of the United States to get there. I got to the Naval Academy, hated it, but I stayed because my dad said hang in there one more week for 52 weeks. 2 things I knew when I left C.A. Johnson High School in Columbia: I was not going to become a Marine, and I was not going to fly airplanes because that was inherently dangerous. I graduated because a Marine had really impressed me. My first year I became a Marine, and because I just, I couldn't think of anything better to do, and my wife said, let's go to Pensacola. We went to Pensacola, and I took flight training and fell in love with it immediately. Subsequently decided I wanted to be a test pilot, and so I applied over and over and over again, and I became a test pilot. And then I forgot about what my mom and dad taught me, because in 1977, NASA advertised for people to become a space shuttle astronaut. And I didn't even think about it. And the reason I didn't was because I didn't think I'd be selected. I didn't know, there were no astronauts who looked like me. It escaped the fact that I was a test pilot, so I already had everything you needed. And I met Ron McNair, the late, great Dr. Ron McNair. He came up for a reunion. I met Ron. We talked for a weekend, and he asked me if I was going to apply for the space program before he left. I said, not on your life. And he looked at me, he said, why not? I said, they never picked me. And he said, that's the dumbest thing I ever heard. He said, going back to what the previous panel said, how do you know if you don't ask? Yeah. Right. And so going back to what several of the panelists said, we've got to teach young kids they have to ask. They have to follow their passion. And so it took me in my adult life to decide that my mom and dad were right the very first time. And so I interviewed and got into the space program and stayed there for 14 years and flew 4 times on the shuttle. And
so what was it like in space?
Awesome. It's just very quickly, the two most dramatic things are, and again, they're senses. The sense of vision, seeing this planet from that vantage point, it is the most breathtaking thing that anybody can imagine. And that's why we seek to get as many people in space as we can. Yeah. You cannot see this planet from that vantage point and not understand that we got to fix things. Wow. That's one thing. The second thing is the sensation of floating. Abiding by Newton's law, the fact that with gravity just unleashed, you float, And you're constantly falling to be factual. But centrifugal force won't let you. And you move your head, your body follows, you stabilize yourself, and you stay there. Your food, you put it out, you go get water, and you come back, and your food is still sitting there. So it's awesome. Yeah.
What's the cutoff age to apply?
The good thing is there is no cutoff age, and there is no minimum age as long as you're a college graduate with a technical undergraduate degree. John Glenn flew at the age of 77, wow. And of course he had flown before. But you know, we're not very restrictive at all, except for meeting basic qualifications of physical fitness and academic background.
So it's not too late for any of us.
It is not too late. I don't see anybody out there in the audience that is not eligible to apply as long as they have a technical undergraduate background. We had 18,300 applicants this year for the astronaut class of 2017. 18,300. We're probably going to pick 10.
Wow. How many women in the 18?
In the class of 2013 is, hey, my class, my favorite class, because for the first time ever in the history of anything I've ever been involved with, we picked 8, 4 women, 4 men.
Wow.
That has never happened.
Wow, we could sit here and talk all day about NASA and wanting to go to space. I want to shift a little bit, and still in the spirit of STEM careers, I want to talk about STEM careers in the entertainment industry. When we think about it, it's in the context of Silicon Valley, et cetera. So Elizabeth, I want to ask you your perspective on STEM jobs within the entertainment industry, and how do we recruit, or how does the entertainment world recruit top STEM talent to the entertainment industry?
Well, the entertainment industry is the one thing that is just changing every second. With the advances in technology, we've been able to make different kinds of movies that were impossible to make before. Life of Pi was specifically one of them. That project took me 10 years. We optioned the rights to the book in 2002, and during the development of the script, we realized that it was impossible to actually make the movie, because we couldn't put a boy and a live tiger anywhere near each other. We couldn't put a real hyena or a zebra and a tiger anywhere near each other, and it was just, it had no schedule and it had no budget because it was impossible. Then, fortunately, luckily for all of us, we had one of the most brilliant minds in filmmaking, Ang Lee, who is himself a scientist in so many ways. I mean, he's an artist, he's extremely ambitious to create new language in film, and because of his quest for new knowledge and because of the advances in technology that the animation and visual effects fields had made, we were actually able to make the movie for a reasonable cost and create those creatures that looked so real and were so emotive, and blend them with skillful editors and technicians so that you couldn't tell when you were actually looking at the real tiger or the animated tiger. And it was a miracle. And I think that getting that knowledge out there in the universities and the high schools and even in the primary schools, that there can be these kinds of careers for you. You have to learn the fundamentals. You've got to study math. You've got to study science. You've got to study visual arts. But there is now such a great opportunity for creative minds to blend their scientific talents and their mathematical talents to enter these fields of visual effects, because it's only going to get more intense, and virtual reality. And there's just so many exciting things happening within the entertainment industry right now, and we need these young minds, men and women, and we need them badly to help us so that we can always move on to the next level and keep our audiences inspired and keep our business alive.
That was perfect. Thank you. Yeah. So we're going to pause in our regularly scheduled program for a moment. So we have a special guest with us. So I'm going to invite up to the stage now Representative Cindy Lawyer to come to the stage, who's going to make a few brief remarks, and then we're going to get back to our regularly scheduled program.
Thank you for letting us briefly interrupt the program. I wanted to bring up someone that really is passionate about this issue, and he's very passionate about helping young people, helping women of color, helping all people of color to be able to get the education that they need to be able to achieve these jobs that we're talking about, these STEM jobs that are so critical. And the person that I'm going to call up now, Steny Hoyer, Congressman from Maryland, and also the Democratic Minority Whip.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. I am so pleased to be here. I am the father of 3 women, the grandfather of 2 women. Now, they're not women right this minute, but they're going to be women, and the great-grandfather of 2 women. I got a couple of boys that are in there as well. They're all women of color. They're white. And that color should be irrelevant if they are really good at science, technology, engineering, skills. I have an agenda I call Make It in America. And in that agenda, I travel all over the country politically for candidates that I'm supportive of, and I tell my staff, panel, I want to visit a manufacturing facility in every trip I take, every place I go in the country. And I was in Manchester, New Hampshire. I'm not running for president, believe me. I was in Manchester, New Hampshire 3 weeks ago. And I went to Deka Industries. Deka is run by Dean Kamen. Dean Kamen holds 400 patents. You've seen the Segways? You know, you ride on them, they keep balance on the 2 wheels. He invented that. He invented the wheelchair that Jim Langevin from Rhode Island, who is wheelchair bound, but that wheelchair comes up so he can talk to you eye to eye. Got a lot of inventions. And he's got a program called FIRST. That program deals, and he's got thousands of chapters all over the world. And it deals with young people in high school or maybe in college creating robotics to do things. And they need science, technology, engineering, and math skills to do that. And Dean Kamen said to me, he said, you know, I'm a lawyer. It was obvious that he didn't think we needed more lawyers in America. He didn't think we needed more doctors in America. He didn't think we needed more baseball players or football players in America, but he thought we needed more engineers in America. Because he thought in China and other parts of the world, they are producing more and more and more engineers. When I went to law school, there were 136 people in my law school class. 3 women. Today, if you go to Georgetown Law School and see the entering class, 54% of them will be women. What's the point I want to make? We need more women in our engineering schools. We need more expectation of young women who are really much better students at a young age than us poor males. That's fact. And I've observed that in terms of how well they did in school and how I was not doing nearly as well as they were in school. And we need to make sure that there is no discrimination at the earliest possible age of not having young women, whether they be 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5, not think that we expected them to do anything for which they have the talent to do. Because if we're going to get more engineers in America, it'll be because we get more women engineers. We're getting men engineers now. But we need more and more women in the technical fields. And if you go out to Silicon Valley and you go through the campuses of Google or Facebook or some of the other networking companies and high-tech communications companies, they will tell you, and my friend Sheryl Steinberg, you know her, Lean In. Sheryl will tell you, you know, people didn't expect me to be into this. but I was into it. I'm good at it. And she will tell you more and more and more the highest performers are women. And that means, fellas, that we got to compete a little tougher, you understand. But in so doing, we will make America better. So I want to thank you for this forum, because, you know, in the Congress, we take real focus on STEM education. And by the way, so that we don't lose sight of all of the things that make our society great, making it STEAM is not a bad thing to do. The arts and culture and music are great ways to communicate and to enrich us and lift us up. But the technical skills that we are now competing with the rest of the world on are critical. If this country, which, as I've said in every forum, is a great country right now, America is a great country. But it will be a greater country if we make sure that all of our people are involved in the technical skills that will be necessary to make it in America, which means manufacturing in America, but also make it meaning succeeding in America. So panelists, thank you very much for being with us. For those of you who may not have been at this conference before, I go to a lot of these conferences. This is my 36th year in the Congress of the United States. This is the best conference that occurs every year in Washington, D.C. The best conference with the best talent for panelists, the most substantive issues that they deal with, and the broadest attendance of extraordinarily able, skilled people who will take the information they get and bring it home to their communities and make their communities better, and in that process make America greater. Thank you all.
Wonderful.
Good to see you.
Oh, well, you know, I look down here. I represent Goddard Space Flight Center.
Of course.
And so I pander to the director of NASA on a regular basis so he will treat Goddard Space Flight. Charlie Bolden is one of the great leaders in our country. You know, an astronaut, a Marine, got all those things, and he trained at Pax River, which I represent, at the test pilot school there. So we're very proud of our Charlie Bolden.
So we will now return to our regularly scheduled program. So I'm just going to ask one more question, and then I'm going to open it up, because I'm sure you all have questions for these amazing people up here. So in the spirit of STEAM, which we just heard, I want to ask Mimi. So you've had some experience, and you have an organization that you've done work with, or that you have established from one hand to another, which focuses on this issue specifically in bringing the arts and STEM together. Can you talk about your work there?
It's Pharrell's organization that he started along with his mom, Dr. Carolyn Williams, in 2011, and basically they do summer programs that focus on STEAM, because they also include arts and motivation as well.
Two M's in that STEAM.
Exactly, 2 M's. But last summer, they served over 1,000 students in the Virginia Beach area, which is where Pharrell is from. And a lot of the work that they do is very sort of fun, project-based, whether it's sort of taking the students on trips to NASA or the museums. But there is a real focus on motivation, because I think what Dr. Williams feels like, you know, they do a lot of dream mapping and really try to expose these students to the careers that are available, because I think that's always the biggest problem, is that a lot of the kids don't realize all the opportunities that are available to them. So in this program, and the hope is to expand and to do it in other cities, but just to try to expose beyond, because entertainment and all that stuff is fun and cool, but we know how important these careers are in in science, engineering, math are to the world and to the advancement of what we can do as a culture. And I think Pharrell and his mom have done a great job in the limited resources that we've had to do that.
Wonderful, thank you. So I think with that, I would love to open it up to the audience, because I'm sure there are lots of questions for this great panel. So So I saw this young lady's hand here first. So if you could stand, tell us your name and your question.
Scream it out.
We'll project while we're waiting for the microphone.
You're doing okay.
I do need it. Okay, all right. I'm Alexis Corbett. My question is focusing on the movies, theater, and I was wondering, have you seen a push trying to get more movies with African Americans or minorities that are successful? Because, I mean, looking through movie history, I feel like with the movie Queen of Katwe, we have a successful chess player and black young lady, and so I'm wondering, is there kind of a trend that you're noticing having been in the field?
I'll take that. Well, what I can say is that just in my limited experience just working with Pharrell on these 2 movies that we've done, I think a lot of times what happens is that people greenlight what they know, what they're familiar with, or what they think is going to have a sort of impact. And I think that, you know, with the 2 movies you just mentioned, that's, you know, we haven't had a lot of movies that show the brilliance of black women on the screen. And just with these 2 movies alone, you've seen this incredible social media impact. Like, people are so excited about these movies, and I think that's something Elizabeth and I are just really excited about, obviously with our own, because we took such a big chance. Elizabeth especially, because she wrote the check to make this movie. But you know, it's the fact that we've got such an amazing sort of you know, impact so far, and people haven't seen the movie, is really big for Hollywood. And that's why it's really important to see movies the first weekend when they come out, because that's what sends the message to Hollywood to make more movies like that, which I never knew. And not until coming into the business, I was like, oh wow, you know, I'm always like, oh, it's gonna be crowded the first weekend. No, you have to go the first weekend or that first week, because if not, that's the only way Hollywood will know to make these movies. So it's really important that we support them. I don't know if there's anything else you want to add.
No, I think that one of the movies I worked on in my career that was for me a seminal experience was Waiting to Exhale. And subsequently, How Stella Got Her Groove Back. And so I had, obviously, a wonderful relationship with Terry McMillan, but for me, that movie was so seminal because it showed African American women. For me, it broke all color lines. It was like, we all have the same emotions. These are women that were drinking Chardonnay, burning their ex-husband's car up, you know, but they were wearing great clothes. They weren't in jobs that were subservient. They weren't in underprivileged situations. And I just felt like it was like, we are all the same. And I just want to keep that tradition up. And for me, that's what Hidden Figures was as well, because it was people that had dreams. I mean, Octavia Spencer's character plays a woman who is doing a job she's not recognized for, she's not being paid for. And you know what? She saw them bring in that IBM supercomputer, and she knew that if she didn't learn how to do that computer language, she and all the women that worked under her were going to be out of jobs. So she went to the library, and she had to actually kind of lift a book out of the white section and take it home to learn the Fortran's language so she could teach herself how to be a computer programmer. And she taught all of her women, and they all hired them. And they were the first computer programmers at NASA. And so for me, how about that for empowerment? And I think, you know what, that's what we need to do.
Amazing, yes. So, is this mic on? Yes, so there's a gentleman in the back who had his hand up. I saw him next. And so we'll try to, I don't know where my timekeeper is. We'll just try to go really quickly. There are a lot of questions I see, so.
Question and comment real quick. Donnie Perkins, Chief Diversity Officer for the College of Engineering at The Ohio State University. Just a comment, like both panels, would encourage adding, we need faculty members as well. So add that consideration to women of all colors, because that's where the images are formulated so that they can sit on that panel.
Thank you. So there's a sister here in the front.
Hello, everybody. My name is Shanara Ramsey, and I'm sort of in one person, the arts and the science. So I have an album coming out tomorrow. I'm a jazz, neo-soul, gospel artist, and I'm also a doctoral level neuroscientist. And I spent most of my life hiding those two sides of myself from each other because in science, I was considered unfocused for being a musician, and in music, I was considered a nerd for being a scientist. So what I do when I go around and give workshops and seminars, the first thing I say is,
or your comment? So because we have a lot of
okay,
people.
and my
listening,
question
so ask the
is,
question.
and my question is, can we do a better job at providing commercials, TV shows that show regular people of color doing science so that I don't have to go around proving to people that you can be regular and cool and attractive and be a scientist and also be a musician? Can we do something about that in media?
Well, I can actually take that question. So the work that I am currently doing at the White House is focused precisely on that. So we are doing this by working on or doing events. We've had events out in LA, we've done roundtables. Actually, at the United States of Women Summit, we announced a commitment that was made by the Alliance for Family Entertainment, which is a daughter group of the Association of National Advertisers. So basically, this group is taking on this issue of the underrepresentation of women, not just underrepresentation, but the types of things you see women doing. And so, of course, we are working with them on ensuring that STEM is very much a part of what they're going to leverage their power for as advertisers. And so this is what we're working on. The administration views this thing you precisely just outlined as a very critical part of all of our efforts to foster STEM inclusion. And so I will share that the response has been tremendous from the community. I've had different conversations with showrunners. People, when you tell them that there is this problem and that they can be a really critical part of the solution and that it doesn't take creating a whole brand new TV show, but just putting something in the content you already have, then they've been really receptive. So all that said, we're working on it, and I'm really optimistic that we'll start to see this in the next a few years even, where we will see more characters and also more diverse people as well. So gentleman standing in the middle there.
Good afternoon. My name is Reginald Reddy, and I have a question that's more geared towards women of color who are already in their chosen STEM fields. What are some of your strategies that your organization or company or agency have used to keep women of color in their respective STEM career choice? Thank you.
So it's a challenge, and I will say I know a lot of people focus on pipeline, and pipeline is clearly critical. There's no denying that. I think actually Barbara, who's now left, talked about it, and somebody else I think on the other panel did too, which is it is about creating an environment, fostering a place where you can be happy, be comfortable, bring your whole self to work, and actually not feel completely alone and alienated all the time. That's hard. I used to work in Silicon Valley. I don't anymore. And I kept getting promoted. I worked for a publicly traded company that had a real product, that had a real audience, that was profitable, and I couldn't stand to be out there anymore in that kind of environment. Part of the reason I went to work for BET, it was the first time in 20 years, my entire career, where I had had either a black person or a female anywhere in the chain above me. And so that is, I think, what it takes. It actually it is about changing the culture, changing the environment, creating allies within the community, actually in the organization, and helping them, so it's not on us, just to be clear, but getting those organizations to actually embrace and value different things. We bring different things to the table, we look different, we feel different, we respond differently to things. And in software, you actually know that different perspectives actually coalesce better and make better product, and that is exactly true also when you bring your staff, your team members into work.
May I add one just real quick? I would add, at NASA we are really big on employee engagement, which means you talk to the employees, and diversity and inclusion is critical. I'm the diversity and inclusion champion at the agency. The most important part of those two is inclusion. People have got to know that they can have an idea, they can bring it forward, and people will listen to it and act on it. They may say no, but at least it's got to be listened to. And if you're not doing that, you're not going to retain anybody, men or women.
question here. So our microphone runner there.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Two things. Allison, I would love to get some of your research. I would love to read it. I run a small nonprofit in Miami. It's called Girl Power. And this past summer, well, I've done 2 STEAM camps for the summer. And I would like you guys to talk about how nonprofits can interface with the for-profit sector to fund these types of programs in the inner city where there's not a lot of funding for it because it's not done in the public school system.
So I'd be happy to talk to you more offline. I think the number one thing is that we've seen, we're out in Silicon Valley, so it's a little different, but the number one thing we've seen is that companies are really trying to figure out what to do now. So coming to them with some ideas, opening the conversation, and I think going back to the evidence base, the more you can try to document the effectiveness of programs, I think that also speaks volumes. Even if it's something like, we found our students are really motivated, interested, want to pursue this again. That's data that you can use to continue to advocate for more resources. But I'm happy to talk to you more offline about that.
Any questions from this side of the room? Over here. Yes.
My name is Tracy Austin. I'm from Chicago, and I have a PR firm. But what we did about 10 years ago was recreate an opportunity for African American kids in our school district to learn about their history, because there is no African American history being taught in the schools, as you are aware. Once a year, 1 month, if that. But through our focus groups, it was clear that they didn't understand who even King is. So if you are a teacher that is in the school district with African American children and you are under 30, the chances, if you didn't go to an historical black college, you don't know your history either, unless there was a grandmother, some kind of history being taught. We have a curriculum. It is in the Chicago school districts. It is also in LAUSD. And we actually, LAUSD really made us kind of put a multicultural twist on it. So I'd like to know, how do we infiltrate this curriculum that really highlights STEM? There's a STEM in the curriculum is K through 12, and it's divided for K through 8, and then of course the high school is a lot more rigorous. But we have a STEM project, and in there it opens up with Banneker, and then it just explodes into everything that you can imagine. How do you get that passed? How do we elevate that within California? Because it seems to be so difficult. Chicago, Atlanta, they get it. California is a different beast. Can somebody tell me what's happening?
Okay.
For our educators in the
Yeah, I guess.
Department of Education educators.
Well, no, I was just thinking, well, one way is just, as I say, just talking about these different stories of just not necessarily mathematicians, but scientists just in general. So I think, for example, was it Garrett A. Morgan, black guy? Probably not many people know this. He invented the traffic light. And the first traffic light appeared in Cleveland, Ohio. He also helped invent the seat belt and a lot of other things we use today. So stories like that I learned as a kid, because my mother basically said when I was going to school, she was like, well, you learn all this other history, you should sit down and read something about what black folks did. So my mother was proactive about that. But I would just say those sorts of stories that, like I said, not necessarily math, but just all sorts of engineering, like was it Carver, the peanut, and all the things he did with peanuts, and basically peanut butter, all these things we know today came from a black guy. So yeah. Percy Julian, there's
great. Thank you. So, well, we actually have to keep going, and unfortunately, Administrator Bolden has a hard stop and actually needs to leave. So,
I want to listen to one. I got it.
Oh,
keep going.
We can do a little
Keep
more.
going.
Okay, I got the signal like, hey, you gotta go. You're respectful now. We can do one more question, and then you can. So we'll do one more question.
I just want to hear. It doesn't have to be my question.
Okay, so we'll take one more question, and then I also want to give closing thoughts, like an opportunity for the panel to give a quick closing thought. And I also want to tell people, don't go anywhere. If you didn't see the clip of Hidden Figures that we showed at the beginning, we will show it at the end. So stay put. So one more question from the audience, and then we're going to get closing thoughts from the group. Yes. She's about to jump and get the mic.
Yes, hi everybody. My name is Latanya Pagis. I'm a proud graduate of Howard University. Dr. I'm sorry, I didn't get your name from Morehouse.
Warren?
Dr. Warren, so now that this door is open with the entertainment industry and you as a mathematician, I actually too am physics and mathematics from Howard. But I think this is a great opportunity to combine what NASA's doing, which I've worked at NASA as well, at the Goddard Greenbelt site. How about we combine this now? Let's make the STEAM, take it off of the paper, and let's create a collaboration. You'll already have done it. So let's open up to all the HBCUs. So you all are positions of power. You have the ability to make the decisions. So what can you do to keep this critical mass going? And let's make it happen for the next generation.
There's a thing called mentor-protege programs that we use in business. So we require our large businesses in contracts to pick up a small business and mentor them. So it's a mentor-protege program. Donald James is the head of our education department over here, and he and the head of our small business office got together and decided we could transfer that to educating the HBCUs. Grants are great. NASA gives lots of grants to HBCUs. You don't get a lot of money out of a grant. You need a contract. And HBCUs, as a general rule, don't know how to contract. They don't have a contracting office. University of Colorado Boulder, Georgia Tech, they contract, they build satellites. And so we have a mentor-protege program where we're trying to reach down to HBCUs and help them learn how you get into the business of contracting, because it allows your students, undergrads, to get involved with grads who are working on things like satellites or whatever else you're talking about. So you can, I'd encourage you to talk to Donald. Yeah. Oh man, we'd be gone.
Well, one thing I'll also add, I know, so CBS, I believe, is already starting to do work where they are going out and they have like a college tour that they started where they're actually going to HBCU. So we're starting to see this already begin to happen, where these collaborations between higher education institutions that serve minorities and the entertainment industry. So I think it's just a matter of ideas exchange and also making people more aware that this is happening and that these opportunities exist. So with that, I want to give our panel a chance to have a few closing thoughts before we wrap, and also show the clip from the amazing Hidden Figures film again. So, and I just want to keep this free form, like fluid, like whatever you're feeling. Like, what do you want people to come away with? We talked a lot about the importance of media and images. There are a lot of positive things that are starting to happen. One of the things that I didn't share at the beginning was the stats. So the Gina Davis Institute shared research on, when you look at representation of STEM professionals in film in particular, men outpace women 5 to 1. So, and when you look at representation of people who are portrayed as computer scientists and engineers, it's 14 to 1. So, and it's astounding, right? This is how we're normalizing inequality even in the stories that we're telling. And so with that in mind, with this amazing thing that's happening with this magical project with Hidden Figures, what do you want this audience to come away with in terms of either the importance of media or the things that are happening, or just the work that you're doing, or just a piece of advice that people can go away with in terms of what they can do to help be a part of the solution to this pressing challenge with diversity in STEM?
Well, first of all, I just want to say how inspired I am by all of you and by all of you in the audience. And I think for me, this inspiration will channel into furthering our internship program. And I think if people can put the word out, if all of you can, and let these young people know that there are internships available. Our company, 20th Century Fox, has paid internships, and if we don't exactly have room for as many people as we would need to within our own division, we try and find other areas within the studio that they can work in, and that includes production and animation and all these different areas that can inspire them, give them something on their resume. And for us, a lot of these young interns have come back after they've graduated from college and gotten jobs as assistants, and their careers have blossomed. And A couple of them are presidents of divisions right now. So I think it's just putting the word out there that there are a lot of companies in this country that welcome young people of diversity, young people with inquiring minds, and that they will be given a chance to get in there and do the work and learn the work and be inspired by people that are already doing it. So I think that communication is probably, for me, the number one thing about that.
Well, let's see. I'm a girl from the projects, a media executive now for over 20 years. I've made such a commitment to storytelling, but ultimately, at the end of the day, I can tell a great story, but it doesn't mean anything if we don't have the support. And a story like Hidden Figures, or from when I was an editor-in-chief of Vibe magazine with Quincy Jones, to the work I do now in Hollywood, it is really important to me to show amazing stories of people of color and the amazing things that we've done throughout history. And I just hope that I get the opportunity to continue to do it, and I hope you guys will support it.
And we thank you for that. I guess for me, the takeaway really is to think creatively about what it means to be in STEM. As we think about, again, I know this whole conversation is really about media and entertainment, but if you look at the impact that technology has had on that, if you look at what iTunes did to the music industry, if you look at what YouTube has done to the entertainment industry. So is Twitter a tech company or a media company? Is Facebook? Is Snapchat? So for me, it really is just about thinking outside of the box and thinking creatively, and that STEM is everywhere and is everything now.
So quick thought I just want to leave everyone with. So we are all, I'm super honored to be on this panel. We're all bringing very different perspectives. So I think the same thing can translate to the audience. Like, everyone is in this from a slightly different perspective or angle or profession. And I think just being clear that walking away today, like, we're clear about what the problems are. So everybody has the opportunity to do something about the solution, whether it's as a parent, whether it's as where you want to put your money, your entertainment dollars, whether it's what you advocate for in your community, whether it's how you teach children. Anyone in this room, I guarantee, has something that they can do to help with this issue.
Real quick, let's not forget about young black boys. Third grade is about it, and if we don't catch them then, they're done. So I think everything we talk about for women, we need to remember that's applicable to young men of color. Do not be afraid to tell them, do not be afraid to fail. Ron reminded me, I didn't apply it because I was afraid that I wouldn't get selected. Do not be afraid to fail. Ask questions, and whatever you do, don't waste your time trying to explain to somebody why you're in the room. Just do your job, and then, do it.
I'm just going to echo two sentiments. Yours about doing your job. Just do your job. And one that the lady said in the last panel, just following your passions and going for it. And you can do this. I mean, the mathematics, I know, I study a field that a lot of people deem very difficult. But you can do this. It's a matter of just persevering. And sometimes you'll fail, and other times you'll get excited about solving problems. There is nothing like being able to solve a math problem. It's pretty cool feeling. I won't lie.
Thank you. So please join me in thanking this amazing panel again. And I believe, so if you would like to say, you can, but I think we're going to show the clip one more time of Hidden Figures. So if you want to see the clip, please stick around. And if not, I believe that is the end of this session.